All right, we're on. So, once again, I don't have a set specific topic I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
Did you have anything you want to talk about in your martial arts journey this week?
Oh, uh, nothing really stands out. I'm pretty sure I did have something to talk about at the end. Like it's weird. Like I usually have ideas at the end of podcasts, and then nothing. You know, the week
Put
goes
them
by.
down in notes.
Yeah. I should start doing that more often. I had a really funny joke earlier, and I was like, I totally forgot it by now. But
Yeah, I should have
um,
been there, huh?
no. I was talking to that chick, and I made an off-color joke, and she fucking found that hella funny, and I was like, I should write this down, and I didn't have my phone near me.
Oh shit.
Hmm.
Well, it's better than telling a joke to a girl and then all of a sudden she finds it to be very gross, and you're like, "Oh fuck."
Yeah, yeah. So what I wanted to touch on was, kind of at the end of the other podcast or the latest podcast, it seemed like there may have been a contrast between my ability to stay cool in situations and yours, and like you were asking, like, well, how do you do this? How do you do that? And I just wanted to set the record straight, that I also have moments where I want to do the same things that you were doing, and as far as like being able to reach out and slap a bitch or like put someone in their place. And so it's not just you, and I didn't mean to make it sound like I'm always chill or I've always got my shit together.
No. I mean, I didn't get that at all. And
Okay.
it's not like I was offended or anything.
Mm. But yeah, just some more, like, during the week some stuff came up about some events happened where they were kind of in line with that whole how do you keep your chill, how do you not respond to certain situations. um, for the most part, I do feel rise, escalation, inside inner turmoil, stuff like that. What has been helping me lately is just practicing. Like I had this music teacher in high school, and he had this on the wall as you walk into his classroom. Uh, it said, "Frame your music in silence," and that's kind of stuck with me pretty much since his class. It would only come into play later on in life when shutting the fuck up really had an impact on how the events unfolded. And so, what I've been able to do lately in life is just not say anything. You want to, like, sometimes you want to get in there with um, the most clever thing to say, or uh, trying to diffuse the situation with comedy. Sometimes just saying nothing does enough for the situation to diffuse it.
No, that's a good point. Yeah. I mean, like, even a lot of the, what is it? It's funny how like not saying anything can help, but at the same time, in order to back that up, you need to have a good image of yourself that you put forward. Like a lot of people think that the first image or the first impression you make is when you come up to a person and you shake their hand, but it's the moment when you walk into a door and people see you. To kind of expand on what you were saying, but I'm just saying, like, it's more than just you not saying anything or saying the right things at the right time. Then on top of that, you also have to add like, you know, something as simple as appearance. Like I was
Sure.
saying in the last podcast where It was like, you had that guy and he was just rambling off,
Mm-hmm.
that one hobo.
Mm-hmm.
And, none of us, I mean, there was a bunch of us and he just wouldn't stop. But then it took my seeing to just like give him that stare and then like, bam. Then he snapped out of it and like went to a different area.
So I think there's, um, political beliefs and alignment aside, I do kind of align with some conservative views on some respects. I don't identify Democrat, Republican, Independent. I don't play that game. Just like people, what's your religion? I don't, leave that out. Leave that out. Don't even come at me with that, because I don't want to be defined by whatever your judgments or preconceived notions of that thing is. I don't want that to speak for me. Let me be
Right.
me. But tonight I was getting nachos and
Yeah.
just before this, and so there was this bum. He comes in and he comes into the place, and this is like a place from my childhood. This is where I got my love for garlic bread. I used to work in the back there. Same guy owns the place from like way. I mean, it wasn't like maybe 20 years ago. Maybe he's like.
Was this that place that you took me to that last time?
Did we go there?
It was like on the corner, and they had like outdoor seating
They
in downtown.
maybe. I can't remember.
Oh no, it's not. No.
Yeah, I don't think you would have been there, because you would definitely, you would have recognized. So yeah, same old guys there. So this bum comes in, no money. He's asking about items on the menu, and I fucking forgot my headphones. And normally I just, in my zone, just gonna, table for one, put it in the corner, just get me out of the way. So sitting there listening to this exchange happen with this bum who probably didn't come in with any money. So, Dudley Do Right, this guy wearing one of those weird, like, ribbed puffy jackets, gets up. And I guess it's like a means to impress his girl or something that he's with. Says, "Oh yeah, I'll pick up your burrito for you." And so the dude proceeds to, and what turned into, from like what would be a $5 burrito is ballooning up to like this $7, $8, $9 burrito. So it's like, that's what you fucking get. But what I'm saying is, the point is that an unintended consequence of this kind action is that now this guy is a customer. This guy has full rights to that facility. So he's there and he's like kind of making a mess of the place, and then he goes and probably takes a dump in the bathroom and then comes back. And so now, like, because this guy bought this dude a meal at this place, he's now legit able to stay there. He's got no fucking manners. He's like, talking to himself out loud, like trying to get other people in on his tasty ass burrito or something. And like, we have to now endure this guy. And then, Dudley Do Right and his girlfriend were pretty much done with their meal. They get up and leave after the dude pays for so it's like, thanks for fucking, like, the bum bomb. What I'm saying is, when people have the best of intentions in mind, or they think this is the right thing to do, and like it seems like on a moral plane, like this, like providing food or giving, donating charity, this charitable action, if he felt compelled to do this, or if he was doing it for his own gain, I mean, there's really, as they say, no altruistic actions. There was at some point, maybe he was trying to get laid that night or something, I don't know. But his action bought us that now experience with that person who had horrible manners and was just making a mess of the place, kind of rude. His attitude went like quickly south after the dude left, and he was kind of like impulsive, just like a kind of like a obnoxious a little bit. And
You mean he wasn't obnoxious before?
no, well, no, there's like one of those like, oh God, like really, you're gonna have a conversation with like, oh, is this fresh? And really, dude, are you really fucking that worried? So, all right, so he asked about the ingredients being fresh. When I was going back to my car, dude's digging in the fucking garbage can 2 doors down.
Whoa.
Same dude. I'm like, all right. So another thing, a health hazard. It's a bum. Where does he go to wash his hands? Like, I mean, not that you can trust anybody walking into the store that they just, didn't take a dump, got a little shit flakes on their hands, and then went to the salsa. That's stuff you don't want to think about. But a bum, you can almost guarantee that dude's been like, ugh, whatever.
Yeah.
And now he's getting his hands in the salsa and like picking through like the jalapenos on the, so
Whatever happened to exercising the right to refuse service?
that was before that. So the old guy was there, and before like this whole exchange happened, there was a new girl working the register, and there was people that likely would have stopped that sort of thing. Like, hey, dude, come on, do you have any money? No, okay, you need to get out of here, sort of thing. It wasn't like a freezing night, it wasn't like a, oh my God, this is like gonna totally, put this person out. They were already on the street to begin with. Like, I mean, he's a survivor. That's, not like us regular folk who get, cold when it's like 50 out. So, not that that's a weird thing. I mean, cold at 50 is still okay. But my point is that what if in that exchange with the homeless guy and you guys just showed nothing but compassion. In America, we are so like full of ourselves on this altruistic give, oh, social justice sort of thing. We don't realize unintended consequences of that addiction to, charitable causes, or being charitable, or being magnanimous, or I'm forgetting all my fucking large English words. But we don't really have any idea of that. So like when we're giving billions out to a country and then they go and are shit to their people, or somehow have an organization that does harm to us, whoops, oh, well, I guess we, where's their check next year, sort of thing. We don't really take into consideration being too nice.
Right. That's one of Dambisa Moya's arguments, saying that, because of our so-called charities, what we end up doing is empowering dictatorships, because they're the ones that control the resources, because they're the ones that even allow us access in there. So we are indirectly propping up dictatorships, while at the same time, because we're giving away all these charitable items, like what's that shoe company? It wasn't Zappos. It was another company where, like, if you bought a shoe from them, they would also donate a shoe to some kid in Africa that needed it.
Oh,
But then, I mean, like, that's great and all, but then, like, when you do that, you're also preventing the local guy from that area from actually like creating his own industry to make shoes for his own people. Yeah, I mean, granted, it's going to be like a crappy shoe, but it's going to be a shoe nonetheless. And I mean, honestly, if you look at the development of America itself, I mean, for all we talk about liberal free trade and all this stuff, I mean, the only time we started doing this is when we reached the big leagues and we were able to control trade.
yeah,
Right. Before that, I
yeah.
mean, like, very much had a protectionist policy.
Mm-hmm.
Anything from Britain, Europe, whatever. No,
Mm-hmm.
we're like we shut that off. We
Yeah.
imposed tariffs and all this stuff.
Yeah, isolationism was definitely a part of the game.
Right. Now, I'm not saying that, at this point in our country's development that we should go back to that. But I
I do.
mean, I'm saying, well, that's questionable. That's
I know.
questionable.
I'm like really just. It would be. What would happen I found that interesting question on Quora about did I share that with you?
No, I don't think you did.
Okay, it was on what if we stopped entitlements or like government processes for a year, and it was super interesting. I will remember to share this with you. Just a really interesting read because they had a smart guy go, okay, well take this, and basically he went through some, pardon me, the scenario, but for myself, likening or relating back to that, I think it would be interesting to see just a year in what isolationism would do for America. Just a year.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, like, even if it is just a year, it's the same reason why, like, every company out there, even Apple, has to come out with an iPod every single year, is because they have to have some sort of presence. Sure, every year it's always the slimmer or the slimmest, fastest iPod ever, and there's some artificially new feature or some sort that they added, which for whatever reason they couldn't add in the last model. I mean, the reason why they do that is because they have to stay relevant. And the
Mm-hmm.
moment we do that,
Mm-hmm.
we lose any sort of relevancy in the world stage. Now, if you want to say that, that doesn't really matter ultimately, I mean, to a certain extent, it actually does.
Not. I wouldn't say that, but look what's happening with our current administration. We're doing a fine job of ruining our own reputation right now.
I mean, to be honest, that's been happening for like decades, well before this one.
No,
So,
dude. With the peace process in the Middle East and steel with China and the tariff he wants to impose on that, and what the fuck? Like,
well, there you go. I mean, you're making my argument that much better. He wants to impose all these tariffs. That's totally a protectionist policy.
protectionist. I'm talking about isolationist.
Okay, well,
Just focus on us.
there is a country that did that pretty well for a couple decades. It's called North Korea, and they did wonders in that country. I hear it is a worker's paradise.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah.
Insane.
They offer their employees meth.
Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. Who doesn't want that?
On a cool diet of meth and starvation.
What's wrong with that? No. So
Did you see their performance in the Olympics? Maybe they were the only ones who got to eat.
yeah, exactly.
Ouch.
No,
All right.
actually, what's funny is when you can actually see which one of the athletes are associated with the military. Like, there's this one picture where there's like a whole row of people, and like in Korean, when you say "경대," "경대" can mean a salute, but normally when you say "경대," which is it translates to "kinh lễ" in Cantonese. So you might have heard it in your Wing Chun classes. You would in your Wing Chun class, if you hear "kinh lễ," you would bow. A civilian would bow, but in one of these games, there was like only one person bowed, and everyone else gave a military salute.
Huh.
So you can tell which people on the team are actually sponsored by the military. Like, they're really military members in these teams.
Yeah, just like an automatic reaction from them.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Good,
Yeah.
good observation.
Oh, it's not on me. I just saw someone else make a
Mention
comment
it.
on that post. Yeah.
But still, I mean, you had the eyes to, go out there and see it. So taking it back to the martial arts thing, regarding, put aside my own, crazy impression on what isolationism would do for America for a year. All right, so to recap, we talked about how charitable frivolities.
Altruism has some unforeseen negative effects.
Exactly. So with that, the same thing. All right. So and also relating back to your analogy with the company who gave shoes to the kid in Africa. Okay, so the kid in Africa, how is he going to keep those shoes? Okay. How long are they going to last? When rain season comes, those shoes are fucking shit and toast. But not only that, other kids see him and want those shoes, they're going to take it. It's this absent-mindedness from a law of the land mentality where we live in this bubble. We live in this consumerism capitalist bubble that we just don't think about this sort of thing. Yet it exists in our inner city. It exists where that bum that I was talking about, who is, got walked into a restaurant and found some schmuck to buy him dinner, just looking around and trying to fish for whoever was going to do it for him. Good tactic on him. But that is kind of law of the land. He's walking in, he's applying tactics. So just this absent-mindedness towards certain real aspects that are indelible with the rest of life. Law of the land. If someone's bigger than you, you're going to be the victim if you're seen as small. This can also come back into martial arts now. So, like, let's say, well, I'll stray away from that analogy because it's going to be I was going to talk about your group, and if you were nice to the bum, other bums come up because this group is typically nice to bums, and now you've got a problem with extra people that are in the way of you practicing. And where do you separate? What's the goal there? Now, are you like providing a service for homeless, or are you there to practice martial arts?
Right.
So there's that. There's unintended consequences with just simple altruistic actions, and that goes and gives more credence to the idea staying silent. Talking about the fight before the fight. This is okay. So you asked, what's something I kind of want to talk about. The fight before the fight's been kind of coming up just today, even talking with that girl. I was telling her about all these books I used to read about, like, I had this friend who would like scour the internet for CIA dumped training manuals into like GitHub or whatever, like the little PDFs or whatever. So reading through those and like just tactics about like social interplay, not really like seedy tactics, but things to be aware of with like social cues.
Yeah, well, I mean, not quite social engineering, but like knowing the things that can lead to social engineering. Like, yeah, like you said, social cues.
Just being aware of it,
Yeah.
Not like, all right, so we don't have to know all of your nuclear arms, but we want to know if you have nuclear arms. Right? So, like, if your country gets attacked and shit gets dire and you have a despot leader in charge, like, do we need to be concerned about your arsenal there? Afghanistan, Pakistan. So
it's okay. Our president has very big buttons.
Not as if Obama didn't either. The legal killing of U.S. citizens in other countries with drones.
Oh, you went there now. Oh,
yeah.
You went there.
Yeah, I mean, people forget that dude was like, yeah, fucking kill him. And then, that was a dude, didn't go to trial. He was a U.S. citizen. Like, so anyways, basically, like, the fight before the fight. So, not giving your opponent not giving a possible opponent, a possible adversary, the upper hand by showing your best hand. Don't tip your cards, right? So staying silent. Not giving them one way or another a reaction to their craziness. So like if they're showing just a big like, oh, gosh, I can't believe this, I can't believe that. They're like, you guys do this, you guys do that. They're acting like big and boisterous and trying to garner I need just someone to just give me a reaction so I can just go off on them. You don't give that to them. Staying silent, contained. It's almost empowering in a sense not to give someone that, because that's what they seek, that's what they're after, they need that. So morality aside, wherever you stand, if you're just trying to keep the peace, and let's say you work at like the shit organization, but some Greenpeace activists come in and they're just trying to fire up the place, like really just causing a scene, and you're just keeping it chill. Kudos to those people who stay silent and contained and don't always react or always go over, So this is something that I think is not really talked about in a lot of martial arts circles. The fight before the fight.
Yeah, you're right. I
When do
mean,
we
but
use this?
the thing is a lot of people will say, like, that's the thing with martial arts, is that they supposedly will teach you to be a better person before they teach you to be a better fighter and all that. But then, like, that's such BS,
That's a
right?
natural thing. It is a natural. Of course, you go to the gym, you're going to be a better person.
Right.
You train hard. You grind that shit out of you. I don't want to say that there's some sort of like automatic assumption that if you are putting hard sweat into like trying to be good, because I mean, I just watched that Netflix documentary, Dirty Money. There was this dude, he would fucking like bike every day, and he was a racer, and he just ran this shit organization that had like those people who answer calls, and they ran like an umbrella company through a Native American tribal organization. So like they couldn't be investigated because of a sovereign domain or something like that. Pardon, all the glossing over like these complex and seriously like inaccurate terms that I'm using. But just to summarize, this dude would like work out hard, yet he couldn't connect that what he was doing was destroying lives. It doesn't. So what I'm saying is, it doesn't mean that if you put in a lot of hard effort that you're going to be a good person naturally. No.
Right. But supposedly, it is because of all the philosophy that's also involved with martial arts that, people become better people through this process,
Mm-hmm.
la, 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 la. And then all of a sudden, yay, some sort of combination of good fighter plus moral person comes out.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't buy that, especially in today's world,
No.
because I mean, especially like, if you compare the relationship that the student and teacher has, and I will use this, student and teacher, even if it is a martial arts instructor, he's just a teacher. You can call him master, but it's not the same relation as what a master and a disciple would have.
You know what? I want to refer to it as mentor and protege.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Because teacher affords some sort of like good, but in your martial arts, you're just teaching. Well, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. I think you were going to say.
Oh no, well, here, so okay, so the teacher student, or if, because here's the thing, if you say mentor and protege, that also implies that someone is taking you under their wing. But what I'm saying with teacher and student is that it's not supposedly that the teacher has some sort of innate goodness in them necessarily. I'm implying the fact that, unlike the master disciple relationship, the teacher student relationship is the student pays the teacher gives the goods. The master disciple relationship is more like the mentor protege thing that you may be talking about, where it is the master will take the disciple under his wing. He will teach him his trade.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, unlike the teacher student relationship, it's like, aside from being a business transaction, that's almost it. Whereas opposed to the master disciple relationship is, this guy is almost like your father. Like, he will take care of you. He has to feed you and clothe you. Now, don't get me wrong, back in the days, this sort of relationship also led to a lot of abuses as well in
Yeah.
certain circles, but
Mm-hmm.
nonetheless, that's how it was traditionally viewed.
But
So, like, yeah, go ahead.
are you referring to like one set of martial arts? Because let's take like McDojos. That does not exist.
No, that is precisely the teacher student dynamic that I'm talking about. The
Mm-hmm.
McDojos are basically, like I said, it's a business transaction. Students pay and teachers give the goods. Now, they
Mm-hmm.
could be crappy goods, and none of these students would know any other way. But hey, right?
That's so.
Because
I think this is a good time to introduce something that we should do with the podcast, as far as maybe revisiting this idea. Like, how has the idea progressed? So, uh, let's take a look you just like put a little pin on it for later, maybe in a later podcast, later episodes. We'll come back and revisit the idea. Like, has anything changed with that? Like, as you progress as a martial artist, do you still feel the same way that a martial arts instructor and their students are in a, now when you say teacher student, are you thinking college professor, college student, or are you thinking public school teacher, public school student, or private school teacher, private school student?
I guess it's more the college professor
That's
to
what
a
I was
college
thinking.
student.
Because you
Yeah.
said the student pays, and in public
Right.
school they don't pay, and the student. But I was thinking that
Not
the
directly.
not well, no. I mean, even then, like some people would never even be in the, like, their parents, and then the students, given their socioeconomic status, they may never even get to a point where they would be paying into that. I mean,
Yeah,
yes,
but
they
it's
would through
definitely not
taxes.
like the master disciple relationship where the master takes on that disciple and houses them and feeds them and is responsible for their life.
Yeah, in some circles it can be. So live-in students, uchideshi in Aikido, there is that is what that is. You live in. So like in certain circles it can exist. Ninjutsu. Well, this is like late 90s, early 2000s. They had that sort of thing with some schools, some of the Americans who were first taught ninjutsu, who took it here. But then there was a shift, and they changed the entire the soke changed the entire name of the art to the Bujinkan.
Yeah. Well, I mean, still, that's a vestige of the master disciple relationship that was more prevalent back in the days. I mean, like nowadays, because it is more of a business transaction, it's like, okay, well, if you're going to pay me, fine, I'll take you in as a student. But back in the days, the master disciple relationship was also established and could be established because, I mean, socioeconomic issues aside, it was also because like the master chose the student. He sees something in the student and says, okay, let's go for it. I'll teach you. And then, that's that.
Or they didn't have a choice. It was a politician's son.
Well, once again, that's more the teacher-student relationship then. Right? So
it's interesting. I think we should revisit. Like, did your perspective change on that at all? Maybe I'll keep a track now. I'll make a little Google Keep on that.
Take a note.
Start healthy habits, right?
Yeah.
So I think I cut you off. There was you were going on student teacher, current martial arts, maybe in relations to an abundance of magnanimous aspects in society that people were just addicted to being giving and being charitable. Was there something in there? I feel like I cut you off. Did your audio
Hold
cut?
on. Sorry.
Okay.
No, I was typing, and for some reason it takes a while to bring me back online.
That's all right.
With the microphone. Yeah. So was there something to it? Nothing specific, honestly. I think we were just kind of going around from topic to topic, really. Consider this the topic exploration episode. One thing I did want to talk about, though, was, and I think this is a continuing problem of mine, is always the motivation, right? That's always something I'm probably going to be revisiting quite often. Like today, right? I mean, I'm supposed to be doing my practices for at least an hour, and that's just for one of the arts that I do. And then I seem to be neglecting the two other ones. So then, but even then, for this one that I'm supposed to be doing, I'm not even putting in the right number of hours that I should be.
Okay.
So I'm trying to ask myself, I'm trying to figure for myself, like, what? I know the original reasons why I got into martial arts, but what is my motivation to continue? Not to say that I'm going to quit, but let's compare myself to, say, like an MMA guy, right?
Okay.
This guy's going in there, he's training at least 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's no rest. Like his whole life is just dedicated. Like this knife is being sharpened and it's only being meant for one purpose, and that's to slash through the opponent.
Okay. But also consider that he's got some sort of reason for himself being there, right? Like, why is he competing? That's what MMA is. Why are you competing? Taekwondo too. It's rare that you'll find a school that teaches you Taekwondo and the culture and the philosophy behind it, of Korean steadfast defense in their country, the national martial arts of the country. It's not Tang Soo Do. Uh,
Well, I don't know. I
so
mean, if you talk to some Koreans,
right.
they would say that Taekwondo was a school of nothing but blood, sweat, and tears. A lot of tears and blood. There's a lot of abuse that goes on in a lot of the Korean schools, like
Yeah,
outside of Taekwondo, but even
yeah,
in Taekwondo, like it's
yeah.
allowed.
Yeah, it's like an acceptable culture there. There was kind of like some like Pak Sik-yoon, the grandmaster, and his son. There was kind of like a wow, dang man, or the cousins that would come visit sometimes. Like dang, dude, like whoa, or even like that lady. So there's a cafe near my work. She's freaking mean to the other Koreans that work for her. Freaking like I mean, you can tell in vocal inflection and shit, but at some point you have to assume, is this just the culture? Am I trying to step in there and white knight something that I shouldn't, sort of thing? Like, hey, take it easy, I've seen some women get in there and do that. It's like, oh, she's mean, or like there's Google reviews on there. Oh, the lady who owns the place is rude to her staff. No, you you come in there one time and you see somebody being rude like that, like can you really make that judgment and then put it out there so everyone else can see? No, you came in at a bad time. Maybe it was a rush. Maybe like have some fucking like, an amount of like a leeway. And so that again, tacking back on that, having applying silence to the situation, having leeway, not saying shit, letting things unfold as they may sometimes allows certain people to maybe come to the decision or arrive at the conclusion on their own rather than you injecting your white knight philosophies.
That's a complicated one because I mean, on the one hand, yes. On the other hand, no. Like, what if Americans back in the 19th century said that slavery was a part of their culture and national identity? Then all of a sudden, oh, it's a part of their culture. It cannot be attacked. And then, the abolitionists are the one, they're just shitting on everyone's slavery party all of a sudden, like, hoo, like, but honestly, um, sometimes a lot of these things we add a cultural value to something that really should not be there. And so, like,
We add a cultural, like we add like, or we blow it up out of proportion.
I think to a certain extent, yeah.
So sometimes we add more than there should be.
Right. Like if the lady is being mean to her people,
Mhm.
maybe we should stop it. Maybe we should not go to that store and patronize them. Or not patronize them, but like be patrons to the store.
Sure. Yeah. I understand that. Um, I just, in my head, with the kind of situation that exists there, the whole mom and pop, independent business owner, like, or small business owner, sorry, independent small business owner, just seeing like, what if they went out of business? There would be a fucking Starbucks there. And then bye bye human connection, bye bye like any real sense of like interaction in your morning,
Well, on the one hand, I mean, you get an interaction with the lady,
Mhm.
but then, you know, the workers on the other hand have another interaction with her, right? A completely negative one.
Mhm.
So,
Well, they may perceive it as negative. It
yeah.
may feel negative too in the inflection and the harsh tones, but I mean, the lady just went through this bigger chick. She just hired her, not just hired her. Sorry. So she hires this big chick, who looks, like she comes from the bottom kind of thing. Sweet lady, can I do this for you? Can I do that for you? She starts like she picks up that the lady doesn't speak English well, so she starts talking shit about her to me while the lady's around, like, oh gosh, here she goes again, like, but not in those inflections. She was, oh, here she goes again, like doing it kind of slyly, like, and not those words like, oh, what's the big deal with that? But she would say, oh, just how poorly she's being treated. But when you start to see that this person's kind of slacking on the job, like there's other people waiting in line and she's just trying to have a conversation, like, that's a fine line, but that's not your call to make. If you're her staff, if you're her subordinate, if she hired you, she hired you to do a job, and she's giving you that job, but then she's not giving you the free space to just hold 15-minute conversations making people wait, while that affects her business. So and she would see that as like, I don't think that's fair, sort of like a anti-authority kind of thing. So the one lady runs a tough, I'm missing on all my little phrases here, but basically she keeps it strict there. Um, Rules with an iron fist, okay. And
Yeah.
so, but come to find out, so one day the big chick's not there anymore. This regular employee that she's had for like 10 years or something like that, this sweet little like Mexican lady, I love talking to her. She says that the big chick was stealing checks and cashing them, and she stole up to like $9,000.
Damn.
Yeah. So that shit exists. This is stuff that, like, this is you have to think about who is going to work at a fucking cafe for like 6 hours a day.
Look, I mean, we can
You know?
go ahead and like argue about all these things. We could even say
Right.
that like because the boss lady treated
Right.
her so
Right.
crappily that she felt compelled to steal
Yeah.
this money because she
Exactly.
wanted to gain back some of her own or what she viewed was her own, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's all sorts of different ways that we can look at it.
Yeah.
But I mean,
This can definitely relate to martial arts too. With the favored teachers, teacher giving favored lessons to other students, and like that student, trying to be mean to other students, or like trying to cater more to the teacher, like it really, like, it's not just limited to a talk in ethics or work
well, it's
ethics.
ultimately human nature,
Right, right.
and then
So
yeah, go ahead.
what I was just going to say is that basically, for people to come in there and, like, okay, let's relate it back to martial arts. So let's say they came into a taekwondo studio, you know, ninth dan grandmaster runs the place. This is a rare and treasured thing for that sort of situation to exist. He's not head of an organization. He's there teaching. Okay, so this dude's got like refined principles and mechanics, and when he touches you, like, you feel like you're like receiving instruction from somebody who's got something special. So for parents to come in there, mothers of America kind of thing, like, and just say, oh my god, he's so mean to my kid, but all of a sudden your kid's more strong, they're more like, they have presence, they're not like whipping in the wind like a tree. When other stimulus come around, they're resolute. I i think we often tend to offer our judgment on things we perceive as being forceful or strict or confined, that if they somehow take away that addiction we have to being free and expressive and kind and generous, there's what I'm saying is there's hidden consequences in just running free like that. Some structure is needed.
Yeah, and I mean it's really hard to define where that structure is, right? So, for instance, with Bruce Lee and Jeet Kune Do, everyone likes to always quote the line where it's something like, um, uh, what is it? Shoot, take what is useful and dump away whatever is useless, and whatever is useful, just make it your own. Something like that. I know I'm
Right.
screwing up that phrase, but we all know it,
Yeah.
right?
We
So then
just.
basically everyone thinks that this is a call to make everything like a free for all, right? Like you can like it's like going to a Starbucks and ordering any fucking drink you want with a solar frappa, whatever the fuck,
Yeah.
add a dash of like something or the other, whatever the hell it is, right?
Yeah.
But no, if you look at the way Bruce Lee trained, like, yeah, sure, he only went through the, completed the first two forms of Wing Chun, but even then, just know, because he has those first two forms down to such a refined place that he can still kick your ass only knowing those two forms. I mean,
Oh, we got a
right?
little separated, but
Yeah.
definitely like, yeah. So 100% with you on that. But so that this. Okay. There's so much I want to say. So this, I think, led to the proliferation of that MMA explosion because his was kind of the first, kind of, I say, um, in America, we'll call it, kind of the first MMA in America because it distilled down the Western fencing, his Western boxing, I'm sorry, Western fencing, his fencing instruction, his Western boxing, his Taekwondo, his karate, his Wing Chun, his Wushu, his all these other fucking styles he studied. Like he and we're talking about one of the tenets of Jeet Kune Do, his martial art. Take what is useful and then cast aside the rest, sort of like idea. Yeah. Um, when this is something that I work on in my head, like as I observe the world. What runaway philosophies are in place? Is it the addiction to being magnanimous, like we talked about before? Is it the addiction to distilling down? We've talked about this in the very early podcast episodes. Distilling down an art form from and virtually separating culture from that, and just getting the meaty bits of it, so where you only have lethal instruction being given out.
Well, I think that's also the thing. I mean, just looking at JKD, right? I mean, I think a lot of it was merely distilled down to just that.
Yeah.
Like it if you don't know Bruce Lee's philosophy, you really don't know the essence of what JKD is. And a lot of people try to do things like, they'll try to mimic his moves. They'll try to learn
Yeah.
JKD, or they'll try to find a person who was associated with with a certain JKD lineage that traces back to one of the early disciples or something like that, right?
Dude, it pisses me off when people try to claim that shit. Like they try to claim that they're a JKD student. No, you're fucking not. He didn't finish. He's dead.
Yeah.
Like you're not a JKD student. I don't care what you think. You have one of his students who's carrying on a philosophy that Bruce Lee had, but you're not a JKD student. It's not a complete thing. He got it
And that was
recognized by American martial arts, sure.
the thing though, for him as a martial artist or just as a fighter, however you want to see it, it was never supposed to be a finished thing. Like to the very day that he died, there was always something new for him to discover. And if he had lived long enough, he would still be discovering new things.
Yeah, yeah. They say that about Aikido. That last bit that you just said,
Yeah.
perfectly touches on, I guess, the founder's last. I'm holding a bottle opener. The founder's last days. Ooh, shit. Uh, the founder's last days, and how he. So Aiki Musu or Musu Aiki or something like that was basically like Aikido movements and technique that come from within. They aren't instructional, like you can't teach this stuff. They're just the way you happen to move. If you like dancing, literally like dancing, but you're doing spear forms, and you watch some of the videos on him, and he's literally doing musu aki or aki musu or something like that. I apologize for not remembering that. But that's not a form he's just literally like doing all the blocks and stuff that come to his mind. The founder of Aikido, the guy who could write it down if he wanted to, turn it into a kata if he wanted to. He has no one to consult but himself. Like, so, pardon me. Taking it back now to the JKD thing. Now you have students that say they're JKD students, and really not. You can have the flavor of. You can have similar situations that JKD students went through, like a historical reenactment. But you can't have JKD. You can't have that because the founder's dead. It wasn't finished, and who are you to think that you could step into somebody else's mentality and carry it on for him? Now, like saying something like that obviously brings to light, other martial arts that have done that. But let's just take the simple fact that JKD was never finished. So, that it's interesting to me when we have this society that gets addicted to what's the best, what's the most effective, what's the most lethal, but you have no idea the sense of culture, what it took to get that information to you there. You have no buy-in for it either.
Well, I think we should, clarify that by like, whenever people think what's the best, what's the most lethal, right? They're in awe with something that is that great, and it seems like they're distilling it down to something as simple as that. But
Yeah.
like you're saying, the road that you take to get there, like what's that phrase? Like success is built on the skulls and skeletons of the dead piled up on the floor or some shit like that. I
Yeah.
can't remember the fucking phrase, but
Yeah.
anyways, basically a lot of people are going to have to die before you actually get to one, like one last man standing, pretty
Right.
much.
Historical relevance, take the construction of the Great Wall. They dumped people in the wall as they built the wall over their bodies.
Well, I mean, historically, that's some of that's a little bit exaggerated, but
Right.
that's another story.
But I
That's
mean,
another story for the end of the day.
the concept's not unheard of. I mean, people being immersed in, having bones and structures, sort of thing, like literally blood, sweat, and tears. It's got to come from somewhere. Dude, it bugs me that. Oh, so I had to. It. Here's another thing that recently happened to me. So, the topicless topic. So one of my friends, fellow same job, that in my past, he was now thinking of martial arts, and he's like, "Dude, help me out, man. Help me out. Tell me what's going on." So I had free time at work, and Googled his area where he lived, just McDojo after McDojo after like shared studio with MMA, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. It's like, dude, you're in the South, so you're gonna have to choose from a lot of like everybody gets a trophy kind of martial arts. I couldn't find any, kung fu. Go figure. And then I couldn't find any sort of like, real like, raw Japanese martial art. You'd think there'd be like some fucking karate or something from the 80s, Karate Kid or something. Oh yeah, let's get a Japanese person out here to teach some of that authentic martial art.
So what's he going after though is the thing.
Exactly. That's what is anyone these days going to go after? You know, like you said. Okay, so let's. I wanted you to kind of keep going with what you were talking about as far as the MMA person, just a random MMA person coming at it these days. What is their buy-in? Is everyone training to fight on TV? Is it for their own health?
Well, I don't know about the average MMA person, but if it's anything like, say, the Thai cage fighter who can like kick a steel pole like nothing and like keep going at it till the damn thing bends.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're fighting for like pennies, literally.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, California's got covered California. I don't know about the other states.
Like, I'm not a fan of Jean-Claude Van Damme, but the movie Bloodsport, that's literally what these Thai kickboxers, in Thailand, they're cage fighters. That's all they do. They're fighting for pennies, and just to get a bit so either they can eat or maybe they can feed their families, and that's their only way out.
Or even here in America, like even if that's not your only way out, sort of thing, but you'd still be fighting for pennies. Like you'd still like there's not money in it,
Right.
and the idea that you could find any sort of sponsorship to go to like any sort of MMA thing, yeah, right. I mean, there's got to be a special circumstance that exists for you for that to happen. Run with it, please. Take it as far as it'll go. Don't just squander that opportunity. But not everybody has that special circumstance. Not everybody has that ability to devote 8 hours a day to training every day.
And like sometimes, I mean, it's as simple as like with Mike Tyson, he was getting in trouble all the time, and then all of a sudden, his trainer, I can't remember his name, but like basically discovered him, was like, hey, why don't you come to me, like, and I'll teach you how to box. And then it was like he saw something in Mike Tyson, and Mike Tyson just, I mean, Mike Tyson, he had a natural gift, but at the same time, he was trained very well. And it was because this person saw something in him that there was a human connection. There was that actual master disciple relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I kind of want to get away from the master disciple thing because that kind of implies like cult sort of religion. Disciple.
Yeah. Well, who's adding a bunch of cultural, references that shouldn't even be in this thing in the first place? Come on, man.
Yeah, you're right. um, one thing
I
that
think women shouldn't be called women because it has the word men in it and implies that they're like men, but they're not, and they're
they're the
unique
woe
people.
man.
I believe they want to be called ginos.
Okay, yeah. Oh, perfect, good. You reminded me of so in your classes
Yes.
in America, we'll have this like okay, everybody gets a trophy mentality, but that kind of extends also to everybody's opinion. Everyone has a right to express their opinion. No, 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 no. Everyone shut the fuck up. The master's teaching. That should be bar none, should not be deferred from, diverted from. Like what happens a lot in school in martial arts, like just remembering from starting different ones, is that everyone feels like the input that they're about to add, the questions they have are going to be answered later. That the thing they want to say because they're raising their hand and they get the opportunity to do this, like this is where like I think we get way far away from like the strict sort of like the Korean lady who runs that coffee shop or the cafe, this strict sort of like a strict environment that would otherwise facilitate these lessons through learning, through going to the martial art, going to the session. I think there's just this overabundance of everyone's opinion fucking matters, and it's it's really kind of like that's one thing I was like considering. Like I consider a lot like what does a new martial artist go through like these days? You know, what is something that they see a lot now? Obviously, you know, we're way from martial arts movies of the 80s and 90s. Now we're in like MMA, and so all you see around everywhere is BJJ, is MMA, is ground fighting work. Like, and man, it gets me because some like it's not like there's required lessons, I would say, or like required milestones of martial artists that you should experience this on your path of growth. But if all you ever see is one thing, how can we be diverse in a culture of martial artists?
Well, it's kind of arguable if you're really only seeing one thing, right? Because BJJ is a new thing, but what is BJJ? I mean, it is an amalgamy of a lot of things, right? It is a Brazilian person's take on jujitsu.
Hmm.
And but then like it's also more than just that. I mean, it like a lot of people that learn BJJ as well. They're not just learning BJJ. They're learning a bunch of other things, or they've come to BJJ with other arts that they've learned in the past,
Hmm.
and they're really just kind
Self
of building
defense.
self-defense, whatever. It doesn't matter. Like, well, regardless, I mean, they're kind of building on something. And I think if you look at the earliest founders, even the early founding of Wing Chun, it was a combination of White Crane and the 12 posts of Eme Serjuang. Now, the thing is even though we credit Bruce Lee with being the father of MMA, he's the only person to come out and openly say, I'm looking into this, I'm looking into that. I'm going to combine all these things and make it my own.
That's tough,
Before
dude.
that, before that, you had to kind of dilly dally your way around and say like, oh well, my master like already taught me this. Like I didn't come up with this on my own. My master did, but he gave
Okay.
me private lessons, quote unquote. Right? He
Okay.
taught me the secret stuff that he
Uh,
didn't teach other students.
uh,
So he was the first one to break away from that mold.
okay. Okay. And sort of like get away from that climate that you had to have private instruction in order to receive the higher lessons, sort of thing, like a.
Well, and I think it's been covered in several episodes of the Jiu-Jitsu Kung Fu where they talked about how if there's this issue, especially with people that go into Chinese martial arts, they always want to find the person that if it's not the original person, like Yip Man, right? He's like the fad nowadays. They will try to find someone who is directly connected to him somehow.
Yeah.
Maybe his son. They'll
Yeah.
try to learn under his son,
Yeah.
or maybe they will try to learn under Wang Sunlong because Wang
Mhm.
Sunlong was the one who actually taught Bruce Lee, and anyone from that lineage or anyone closest to Wang Sunlong is going to somehow impart something special upon them.
Right. The natural distilled, like the pure stuff.
Right. And for an extra $300 a month, you too can get this secret pure Wing
Uh,
Chun. Like it, and it goes back to that whole issue with the esoteric, right? Once again, like because there's a lot of stuff that remains mysterious, that a lot of bullshit is allowed to just fester.
I think one of the problems is that you still kind of need that private like separation of okay, these students these lessons are good for the whole class. We can cover this in class, but some of this stuff like how to break a neck, or how to silently kill your opponent, pardon me, that's reserved for like the private instruction. You're gonna know exactly who you're teaching that to, so that way if it ever gets back, or whatever. I think that there still needs to be that, but in an age where the bigger market is BJJ, MMA, and like you were saying with Bruce Lee, how he kind of opened the door or removed the mold from that. Oh, you only learn this in private from this master. I think that it it takes away from the martial art that it doesn't really have anything, because you show all your cards. You don't have anything special. You don't have any like master teacher relationship at the end of the day with your advanced students. You could like pretty much teach them all they need to know, and then they move on to the next studio, which is fine if that's how they're going to progress as a martial arts. But I think personally, I would like to belong to one dojo or one school, and then maybe, participate in lessons elsewhere. What I'm saying is, in an age where the bigger market is for MMA and BJJ, and in the South, you have you have there's Chun Cook Do. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh God.
Chuck Norris's
James
style.
Yeah, I know.
And then you have Taekwondo and then karate. But all they do it for is the trophies and the big, like, everybody, like, it's like a family thing. I don't know. It's the capitalism really got up in there for the competition. So, but I think like Ome Kung Fu, there's only one school. There was one school in Sacramento, and if is certain secret aspects, the esoteric, yes, that should exist with the master, but if no one else comes to your school anymore, that knowledge dies with that one person. That one school that gets shut down.
Just like Bartitsu.
Bartitsu?
Bartitsu. Yes, it has the word tits in it.
Tits.
Yes.
Yeah, so, got my attention.
This guy, his last name was or his first name, I can't remember what the fuck is, whichever it was. There's the name Bart in there, and he was the first British guy to ever travel all the way to Japan to learn jujitsu. And so he took elements of jujitsu and he reached a relatively high rank, and then he combined it with elements of street fighting that he would see in the bars. So then he created his own thing called Bartitsu. Anyways, this thing died out. It died out because jiu-jitsu finally hit the scene in London. Thanks in part because he was the one that wanted to introduce jiu-jitsu, partially to promote his own school, but because he brought this stuff over to England, it kind of outshadowed his own stuff. So Bartitsu is dead, but recently there has been a resurgence of research on this lost ancient art.
Oh God!
Right? Something that probably should have died.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just love how we add this nice spin to it, right? Once again, it's esoteric. It's it's ancient. Ooh.
Okay. So
that's the problem with a lot of Chinese martial arts, and not just Chinese martial arts, any martial arts that has that sort of esoteric flavor is going to play off of that shit.
Yeah. I guess I don't know, that kind of makes me feel like there's more credence to the whole it should have some sense of culture in the art.
So what culture is in Bartitsu?
Exactly. So, but then that kind of leads me to believe or puts me back in the sort of transcendental, who decides who lives and who dies? Right? Who decides what art should live and what art should die? Now, granted, Bartitsu, some fucking egotistical made martial art. It's got the dude's name right in there. It's not Bruce Lee Do. But what I'm saying is there's first of all, there's no Department of Martial Arts. There's no culture society of martial arts. That video that you had where they were talking about the formation of it is cool. I love the idea, but I do think that there should be some sort of at least cataloging of something like that, to where you at least get all the where you at least get a loose idea of what the artist was trying to accomplish with it. I think there should be that sort of thing. So we can look through a book. Oh, well, here's some forms we could study in this. I mean, this guy had a truly unique way of doing it. What can we do with that? Oh yeah, Bartitsu. Like, not like a recipe book, but something kind of close to that.
And thus we begin another problem with so with the Tao Te Ching, right? The very first line is what is it? If the Tao can be named, then it is not the real Tao. And it kind of goes back to martial arts as well.
Okay.
Like the moment you start writing things down, you start sort of detracting away from the martial arts itself, because there's a lot of things that, like, it changes depending on your opponent.
Okay, but
So, yeah.
whose idea was that? Right, and at what time did they live?
Well, thousands and thousands of years ago, but I mean, like, but there's a I hate to admit to this, but there is a sense of consistency that lends to not the credence, but it helps the esoteric, because what you want is something definitive written down, right? But to any person who has reached a certain point in the martial arts, like, when you're fighting, you're when you've reached the point in which you don't have to think about what you're going to do because it's so well ingrained into you, then you're no longer thinking. You're just reacting.
Yeah.
So for someone to write something like that down, I mean, you can't even begin to grasp, like,
But that's not what they're writing down. They're writing down, like, the form that they're trying to teach. They're not writing down why I do this. They're writing down, or like, how I progressed as a martial artist to this point. They're writing down in the first form of Bartitsu, this and this and this. Like, and so I would say, like, as a cultural appreciation for that, like, some sort of catalog. Like, I was very fascinated in the first Matrix movie when they could just use these cartridges and teach themselves entire forms. And then, so in the very first battle, where he's like, they put him in, like, this Japanese dojo, and they're battling whatever, and they start switching forms. The idea that they're still sticking to a form, they're still sticking to drunken boxing, they're still, like, looking in a certain way, that they stay within that framework. Now, I get what you're saying. Like, the idea is lost. You should be fluid and there and present, and not worried about, am I staying true to the first form here? What is my master going to think about this? You shouldn't be having those things. Now, we're not talking about conflict. We're talking about the preservation of culture, of martial arts as a culture.
And then it comes back to what you were talking about earlier, which is well, I mean, comes back to the moment you add culture upon something, then it becomes untouchable. It's holy. You shouldn't say anything against it.
I don't know, man. But so, like, this is one thing that's, like, an interesting discussion, like, just outside of martial arts, is like, in my race, ethnicity, and inequality class I took at college here, they talk about how the prevalence, or the amount of culture within a small slice of society, like, let's take LA. It's a very diverse population. There's lots of culture there, but the amount of cultures present correlates with violence, inner city violence, because cultures clash. Now, what is interesting to not saying that that's a true thing, it's just like essentially that was like the last chapter in the book, or that's the last focus point that we had in that topic in that class that I took. But what's interesting to me is that other people talk about, there was an interesting post I could forward you. I think I favorited it on Imgur, where there's cultural appropriation, right? And there's this idea that white people, let's just call it like it is. White people go in there and they try to go to India and they try to live as Indians and own this, and then they come back and give their kids Indian names, like this idea that they're somehow owning someone else's culture without like being, I guess, of that ethnicity. I don't know. To me, the idea of cultural appropriation is so barbed. It borderlines almost racism to me, to think about like how you can't touch or be in that because that's not you. Like white people can't listen to rap. Really? Are you saying that? Cultural appropriation. Are you saying because white people have rapped before that they're appropriating black culture? Is that what you're trying to say? Like, so this idea that like the social justice warriors come out with, like how you're not restricting yourself to your own culture, like you're not barring yourself off enough. To me, and I'm sorry. So in that post that I was referencing earlier, it was this Japanese person who talks about how. Okay, so what it was this person posted a pic of their daughter in Japanese geisha getup, and then the social justice warrior replied, oh, white people doing this, of cultural appropriation, you should be ashamed. And then a Japanese person below that says, hey, I'm Japanese, I live in Japan. What you're saying, it can't be further from the truth. This is something we share. This is something we open up to people, to tourism, to people who visit and want to study. So the idea that culture is segregated or closed off, I think, is something that needs to be worked on in ourselves. The fight before the fight.
No, that's a very good point. I mean, I do agree with you in that instance, but let's say like something as simple as food, right?
Okay.
Something as simple as food. So, like, let's say with sriracha sauce, you see a lot of T-shirts being worn with the sriracha logo and all that. That's great on the one hand. Hey, people now know about sriracha, and you see sriracha this and sriracha that. To be honest, it's a little bit nauseating. So on the one hand, it's great. Yeah, sriracha is being known. Hey, one of the great, I don't know, not Asian wonders, but whatever, a contribution to American culture, right?
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
call it a wonder.
yeah. But, so on the one hand, people love it now. But growing up as an Asian person, when you're being made fun of for eating something that is different, right? And then all of a sudden, something that like was uniquely yours, even if someone made fun of it before, it was uniquely yours. And then all of a sudden, for that to be taken away, like all of a sudden now it's cool because those same people that used to make fun of you for doing that thing are now taking it for themselves. And it's like, well, hey, like, what the hell? On the one hand, you're making fun of me for doing this. And then on the other hand, when you discover that it's one of the best things on earth, even though we've been saying that for years, at the same time, we still, as a people, get brushed aside. But then it comes back to the 18th century colonialistic sort of thing where it's like people try to gain colonies so that they can steal and loot from these people and admire, quote unquote, these people's cultures, but yet they don't treat these people any better.
Yeah, and the idea that they would admire back then, really?
No. They no. There are a lot of there are people that would argue once again, the white man's burden, that because it is the white man's burden to preserve these cultural artifacts, otherwise the local people will just kind of, ruin it for
They
themselves.
may ruin it, yeah. They just keep it in that stone hut there. It's going to get ruined. It's going to be weatherized. That poor piece of art. We need to take it from there, right?
Exactly.
I can definitely agree with you on some of those parts, but the tone that you're using, kind of in sort of, pardon me, I don't mean to like
I mean, well,
point
let me
fingers.
finish. Let me finish.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
please.
on the other end of that spectrum, there is Hawaiian food and Zippies. Now, if you've ever been to Hawaii, you know what Zippies is.
Okay.
And if you've ever been to a Zippies, you know how shitty it is. It is basically a local Hawaiian version of Denny's. It's called Zippies, and
Okay.
they have all sorts of Hawaiian food. And if you're from Hawaii, you would love it because they have like all the loco moco or whatever the hell you want. If you love that Ono Hawaiian barbecue crap or like L&L drive-in or whatever, you would love Zippies. But I'm not one of those people. And yet every time you hear a local Hawaiian talk about Zippies as quote unquote culture, that's disgusting. Like when you misuse that term culture. Oh.
I guess it depends on perspective. I mean, like, what if somebody considered that part of their culture growing up?
Look, I mean, like you can talk about, that's a problem though. You can add the word culture to a lot of different things,
Yeah.
and then certain liberals would be like, oh, I can't touch it because it's someone else's culture. No, like if you go to China and some jackass is just cutting in front of you in the line, fucking yell at the motherfucker, kick his ass or something. I don't give a fuck. That guy needs to be taught a lesson. I mean, once again, we're coming back to like, needing to control the fight before the fight and all that. But in any case, like if you're saying that like, oh, this is the way people behave over there, that's their culture. Like, no,
Mhm.
fuck that shit. Like you cut in front of the line. Don't fucking add culture to this, or like, that kid, that little kid that basically shat in the middle of the aisle on the plane as his grandparents uh, put a newspaper there so
Mhm.
that he could freely shit like a fucking dog. Because that's what they do in China. I'm not joking.
They shit
Their
on tape.
kids, no, that's if they're being nice. Okay. They will shit on the newspaper, wrap it up, and then dump it in the trash can. That they were being nice on that plane. In China, there are a lot of kids who just run the fuck around and shit all over the place. I mean, like, maybe not in cities nowadays, but and maybe in the suburbs still.
I don't know, dude. I've seen some posts. People just taking dumps in supermarkets in China.
But well, see, people would like to argue that these people are country bumpkins or whatever from the countryside and they're only migrant workers in the city.
Mhm.
But you're right. It does happen in the cities.
Mhm.
And that's why even when a fairly affluent middle class couple went to Hong Kong, they wanted to do the same thing with their kid. Like, and they, yeah, they wanted to allow their kid to,
Shit
do
in
their
public.
thing, shit in public. But to to the couple's defense, they had a newspaper right there ready for the kid.
Oh God.
Yeah. So Hong Kong people, like there's a lot of Hong Kong people that saw this and they're like, what the fuck? They got their phones out. They're like, what the hell are you doing? And they took pictures of the couple. They're like, what are you doing? This is Hong Kong. Like we're a land of like, laws here. And
Civilized people.
you're totally ruining, first of all, our public sanitation. Second of all, we have public sanitation laws for a good reason.
Yeah.
And yet this couple is just like, like, what we're not doing anything wrong, blah, 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 blah. And then because this happened in Hong Kong instead, right, then every mainland Chinese commentator was saying, oh, those Hong Kong people, how dare they?
Oh God.
Yeah. So once again, culture, all of a sudden letting your kids shit on the streets like a dog is all of a sudden culture because it's the accepted way that people do things. Somehow that is culture.
But isn't it kind of embodying what you were just talking about with the Chinese commentators when you say that culture in that tone? Right? I mean, so like I don't think that there should be one strict definition of what that means, but maybe
Culture is
when you're,
ultimately a human construct.
yeah, like time. Time, yeah. A second is the oscillation of a cesium atom.
That's how you measure it.
Yeah, that's how you measure. Well, a fraction of a second, yeah, for the atomic clock.
Yeah.
But I mean, time here is based off of our the structure of the solar system for our star. Time elsewhere would be based off that structure, like, so then you come into this concept where you would need space days or like space time,
Right.
stellar
Yeah.
years, stellar days, like, and like,
And
what are
some
you basing
cultures
that
don't
off of?
even have a sense of time at all, or maybe
Yeah.
directions. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And but we're talking about culture. So basically, the idea when you have patterns that you in the endearing patterns that you identify with, we'll refer to that as culture for now. That are somehow defined the way you run a day. That they have parameters that basically describe actions that you have as a person and how you socialize and interact with others.
Remember the days when Rich let his daughter just shit and piss all over the fucking.
I can't believe that. That's like that. Okay, you, way to go in there and kind of make me feel like eat my own words, because that's a cultural appropriation right there. So maybe I have to reconsider my whole notion on the anti-cultural appropriation on that. So good. That was pretty good word foo there. But as far as its widespread use and how, like, if I was a German descent Guadalupe, sorry, no, oh god damn it, my fucking uh, my brain is totally shitting right now. But all right, so let's take anywhere that like Denmark or Germany had settled in Central America, where you have white people that speak Spanish, and they come to America, and let's say one joins a mariachi band, and they are putting on that suit, and you have a social justice warrior coming up to, how dare you, how dare you, you're doing cultural appropriation right now. That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. I'm not talking about like that specific good example you gave of a
Right.
couple trying to shit in public because
Right. So
you think of
basically,
what you do.
I think we can agree ultimately that between these two extreme examples, that there is something in the middle, that there's a balance between the two, between the abuse of the word culture
Yeah,
and the abuse of not, or it's another form of an abuse where you're not allowing someone else to enjoy it, I guess.
because it's freely, that's what culture is meant to be. It's meant to be
Yeah.
freely shared. Not
Yeah.
everyone has these, like, firm, like, it's, everyone else is on the outside, isolationist with my own culture. Your culture is going to die with you if that's how you live life. Your culture is going to die with you if you don't share it. The
Yeah. And then,
preservation of it is on your people.
that's the thing, right? That comes back to, down to the culture is only going to flourish as long as there's a community of people that are willing to thrive in it, right? And that is ultimately, it is ultimately, dependent, dependent, or bah, dependent on one person. It is very much a top-down thing because, let's say, when you form a startup, it is the CEO and it is the founders that set that culture. And if they
Okay.
introduce a wrong person into that element, it
Yeah.
will affect the company down for years. Like
Hmm.
the reason why we had to deal with slavery is because that issue wasn't decided upon during the founding of this nation because there's so much political infighting about whether or not slavery should be a thing and all that. And then they're like, well, okay, well, let's just let the South have their slavery, and then the North will do its own thing. But if you ask the founding fathers, they probably would have been like, oh yeah, the Civil War thing, yeah, we probably would have seen that, coming down the road.
Right. I think they did mention something about that, but also they had the slaves too.
Right.
It
So
wasn't just the South, and it was an economic thing.
yeah, but back to the idea of like what establishes and then abuse of abuse of the word culture aside,
Mhm.
like establishing a set of norms within a group and within a community is determined by that leader, whether or not we like to admit it. Whoever he allows into his group
Mhm.
sets the tone of that community. And then the whole entire community then determines from there on, how things will be run.
Mhm.
And it comes back,
Obviously,
yeah,
he or she, because there's matriarchal societies, all that.
matriarchal, patriarchal, whatever. And
Mhm.
this comes back
Right.
to like the different martial arts. Like the type of martial arts that you learned also to a certain extent determines kind of you will become. So to circle it all the way back to what we were talking about, where a lot of these masters will say, before I teach you martial arts, I will teach you to be a better person. They're kind of putting this thing in a romantic term, but really what they're doing is they are enculturating a person to their own culture. Like they're bringing in a person to, uh,
Assimilating.
yeah, it's assimilation.
Mhm.
Right? And so it's kind of like, I think that's the thing though. A lot of people who are joining different martial arts groups nowadays, they're almost looking for something like a church almost, right? It
Sure.
is that,
Yeah.
yeah. So there's that sense of community and
Mhm.
like, if you don't like your church group or whatever, then you leave. And it's the same thing with martial arts, right? I mean, like we can dabble in a bunch of martial arts, but eventually it will come to a point where either A, we settle on maybe just one or two, or maybe just one, or it gets to a point where, we've kind of learned enough from each and one of these martial arts that we then go out and make our
Yeah.
own.
Yeah. Yeah. Or the chapter closes in your life, and you start a family, and you just don't have time for it anymore. You studied
Yeah,
as long as you wanted. Yeah.
exactly.
I still think that there should still be some documentation of all this, though. Like just for record keeping and historical purposes, like you're talking about with that dude, Bartholomew Zoo, Bartanazan,
It has tits in it. Come on.
Bartitzu,
There you go.
Bartitzu. So like it not in a sense like you can study from it, but that it's like an encyclopedia of martial arts styles, a record, a catalog that you can refer to.
I mean,
Because in the end, I think we're all ultimately going to be funneled into some form of an MMA.
yeah, maybe. I don't know.
I think in the end.
I mean, yeah, it'll be an amalgamy of like this and that. And I mean, who knows what's going to happen with the onslaught of robots
Oh,
that fight.
Fuck me, dude. You've seen the way they've been able to program them so that they move fluid and solid, and like they're like mimicking, like, oh yeah, you showed me that during one of the podcasts you did with the sword cutting thing.
Yeah.
God damn, these fuckers with the smarts there programming shit that we're gonna have to pay for later. Stop making Skynet. But it's a good topic. This whole culture, the perception of culture, where you belong within it, how you think it should be shared, and how that relates to martial arts. Basically, why consider that? Because that brings you back to why you do what you do as a martial artist.
Okay. So let's end it here on that note, and then I will talk to you offline.
All right.